What top 5 you smoking on? My top 5 is Moomin, 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 Moomin. Welcome, everyone, to the Sky Children of the Light season ranking by yours truly, Badshaw. Now, we're just going to go over and rank, in my opinion, all of the, 23 seasons, let me just add that right now, 23 seasons of Sky Children of the Light, from Gratitude to Moomin. Now, I'm not going to be ranking these seasons on cosmetics mostly, because everyone really has different styles on cosmetics, and you can just combine and mix and match, and in my opinion, it's much better to rank the core content of the seasons, rather than just the cosmetics. So I'm going to be taking into account the emotes, the gameplay, the spirits, the lore, the new features added, and especially the new map. I mean, I love new maps. Which is why 23rd, 22nd, 21st, 20th. Yep. All 4 of these seasons are in contenders for last place because, well, they don't have any area or quests or really anything going on. They're just cosmetic shops basically, and I think this is a unique transformation on to happen in Sky, because now if we get to the later seasons, a lot of them, especially Revival and Moments of Battle, like these newer seasons, they have a lot of personality and character they put into each one of the spirits, but not with these 4. For these 4, all of these spirits are going to be featured in later events and seasons, of course, but they were just emotes and cosmetic shops. They barely had any personality or character to them. However, I really think that if you look at it, I mean, here's how I'd put it like that, because 23rd, okay, let's just go through these. 23rd, Gratitude, I mean, it's the first season, what do you expect? They didn't really have much to do with anything, honestly, just cool cosmetics. It's like almost less content than a days of event now, which is crazy if you can believe that. Like, this full-on season has barely anything going on with it. 22nd is Rhythm. This was a rehash of a lighter weight season, and again, doesn't have much. One of the spirits, a few of them, appear in Aviary Village, but yeah, there's not much there. The Rhythm Guide is the twin of the Performance Guide. I mean, it's a cute piece of lore, but not much. Lightseekers introduced the daily quest, the Lightseeker daily quest, the Catch the Light ones, and I mean, again, I'm not going to go through these quickly. Belonging, however, I think, is the interesting one, because a lot of people love the Belonging Grandom event, and while I agree it's cool, I really don't think the season itself has any credit, because, I mean, again, if you really look at it, the Belonging Grandma, people don't go there for the character of the Grandma, they just go there for wax, and I feel like that's a bigger problem in Sky that I could probably talk about later, but people just don't care if the Belonging Grandma was a static piece of wood, or another spirit entirely, or just there's nothing and just had wax for you to get. It wouldn't really change perception of the event, in my opinion. So the Belonging Grandma does exist, like, as an event, but I don't think it really gives any boost to the season, really. And it's really only there because it introduced some new areas, the Belonging underground caves and stuff like that. And the reason to have Lightseekers above the other 2 is really controversial with the piggyback. Now, for most of these, I don't really factor in emotes, and emotes don't really matter for the seasonal spirits because the base game emotes, they're already kind of like, they cover all your range of emotions, but piggyback is a really unique one because it's arguably the most powerful emote in the game, and it has some good parts about it and some bad parts about it. Now, it obviously has a lot of out-of-bounds potential, which you can use for, plenty of glitches throughout Sky, and I think that's cool. But I also think that it's overbearing, almost. It's like a centralizing force. Like, without piggyback, you're objectively worse off compared to all other flying techniques. And I don't really think that's a good place for an emo to be in. I know that they'll never nerf piggyback, but I feel like there should be other ways of flight techniques, or more interesting ways to fly around, rather than just hopping on a white candle and stuff like that. Now, again, we're going basically chronologically. 19th is Enchantment. The Forgotten Arc is a pretty bland area. It was the first of its kind. to be a seasonal area, and I mean, it's a flat desert with a cave and a boat. I mean, it's not that interesting in the grand scheme of things. Some of the lore with the elemental lights are a bit cool. They're referenced in later seasons, but I don't like how the quests are just find this hint or whatever. I feel like it'd be a lot cooler or more interesting if they actually gave a more direct hint for the lights, because the solution is literally just search it up in the wiki at this point. So those 5 seasons, I kind of breezed through them because there's not much to talk about them. But that's not the place with number 18th. Yep. Here goes Moomin. Arguably the worst modern season of Sky, and it's the one I hate the most. It's probably the biggest filler ever made in Sky Children of the Light. It uses far too much from the Moomin brand, leaving no room for Sky to adapt or use its own things to the world. If you look at the other collaborations here or here or here, I mean, they don't really have much to do with the overall lore of Sky, but at least they adapted Sky's themes or Sky's creatures or the world or some part of Sky into its own thing. But Moomin is literally just the Moomin stories copy-pasted into Sky's world. And the seasonal area is just a generic grassy area. No floating, no clouds, no light creatures, none of the unique flora or fauna for any of Sky's world. Nope, it's just plain old Moomin. And I honestly think it's a big disappointment because also, you can't even interact with the Moomin as a Sky kid. You have to basically be spectator mode in a butterfly and watch all these stories happen without you, the player, really interacting with any of them. The side quests could have been interesting, but it feels like the devs just ran out of ideas and made abstract set pieces to use instead. I feel like Moomin proves that he hasn't learned from the clear mistakes. And while there are seasons above it, I feel like Moomin is the one that worries me the most about Sky, because there are recent seasons I like, and we'll get to them soon. Actually, no, we'll get to them much later, because there are plenty of recent seasons I like. But Moomin especially is like the last straw in terms of collabs. I feel like after this, you can't go any worse with Sky collabs. And it really started, I'll tell you when it starts, trust me. But this is like the culmination of it, all the bad things that happen to collabs. Now, on to regular seasons. 17th is plain Assembly. The Treehouse area is fine, but in my opinion, it's a bit too small and cramped to really have any interesting stuff going on there. And the mechanical, the prop stuff, was a bit poorly implemented in the season. The worst part, however, has to be the shared quests. I feel like TC had a bold idea, but didn't know how to do it well, so instead they had this really poorly executed quest, and I think that some other seasons do these much better. 16th is Remembrance. Remembrance is the first of what I would call the tutorial seasons. Now, these tutorial seasons don't really have much else going on. Sometimes they might have a cool story or whatever, but they're mainly there just to make and introduce a new mechanic. And Remembrance, this is definitely true with the shared spaces. Now, I actually like the shared spaces. It's a cool way to showcase the player's creativity, and I think it's implemented well within Sky. However, the new area, especially the repository, is just too small. And not just small, it's just entirely uninteresting. It's just a weird vault area, and it doesn't have much else going on. I feel like there could have been a lot more interesting stuff to be implemented there. And the spirit stories, I mean, they're cool, but I don't think they're executed the best, especially with just the constricting season quests. I feel like just play season quests, then the spirit gets rewarded with the loved one coming back. I mean, it's very formulaic if I'm being honest. But it's fine, I guess. 15th, another tutorial season. This one is nesting. It's only there for, no story, no character, no gameplay. Well, no real quests, but the nest mechanic. I actually like the nests quite a bit. I think they're a bit cool, but they should have had more of a natural aesthetic, but I think the nests are cool for what they're trying to go for. there's nothing else that I can talk about, really. Like, what? The nesting guide, it has 0 character, and I'll... Actually, this is probably the last of the seasons that have, like, a real shopkeeper vibe, because the nesting guide is literally just a shopkeeper with not much else going on. 14th is the season of Passage, right here, and it's not really that much of a tutorial season, but it does have actually quite a lot of experimental stuff. It's the first season to, I guess, permanently introduce the festival tech mechanic. It was used for the Aurora concert, but Passage was the first one that actually did it in any sort of permanent way. Now, festival tech is definitely a really, really controversial thing in Sky. It used to be, at least. I think that most people kind of enjoy it now. It's been fine-tuned, it's very technical, and a lot of devices don't handle it well, but I think that Passage's implementation of it is decent. I mean, the quests are kind of really unique for Sky. They're kind of like a proto-imagining of Sky of like the togetherness and cooperation and social mechanics. And I know that a lot of players don't like that, but I think that they should do more of that. Like, it's almost like a raid boss, these quests, where a bunch of, you get like, 20, 30, 40, 50 Sky Kids coming together to do one big task. And I think that they had a lot of very interesting potential. The season's aesthetics of Nighttime Isle of Dawn, that's cool. I liked all the little story of the spirits, and I think it's overall a decent season. Yes, 13th, Aurora. How could they say this? 13th, Aurora, all the way near the middle. What is the meaning of this? 13th at Aurora. Okay, let's see. Let's explain this, okay? This season is extremely polarizing for me, so it makes sense why it's near the middle. The concert, in my opinion, is the only thing people really care about in the season. Like, the concert is like this over-centralizing force, and yeah, it's really good. It shows off the world of Sky New Light. The song is adapted well. I think Aurora is a good singer, and she's especially good at singing like Sky stuff. It makes sense. She's already worked in Sky before, so it's a natural collaboration. That being said, I really, really hate how the concert mechanic is implemented in-game. If you didn't know, the concert was available for only short periods of time, and now they're permanently unavailable unless you either A, buy a $25 cape and manage to have it, which if you're a new player, good luck finding that, or B, you have to find someone else who has it. And I think that this ridiculous gameplay limitation really, really hinders Aurora. I know, of course, there's a Discord servers that allow that, but it's just poor game design. Like, imagine having to go to a Discord to access this extremely interesting, lore-relevant, and beautiful, honestly, concert. I like the concert's ideas and what it has to offer. It's just the execution of it really, really makes me mad. As time goes on, fewer and fewer people have the cape. That's just how scarcity works. There's going to be less and less people who have the cape originally, and it'll make it less possible for new mods to find the concert. If they want to find some of the Aurora wings naturally, well, good luck. Otherwise, you'll have to use an external service or an external website to manage that. So yeah, that's the main reason I have Aurora. The other stuff is okay. I mean, I don't really care or like that the concert is just a Valley Stadium, but reused. I think that they could have had a more creative implementation of that, but it's fine, I guess. That's why I have it 13th. Aurora's fine. The bad and the good kind of outweigh each other, and it's left in the middle. So now we get to the, I'd say, B tier seasons. These two seasons have quite a lot of good stuff, but they're just missing, in my opinion, an interesting spark or a really clever, or maybe they're just poorly implemented. 12th is Duets. Now this season is basically just story, like 95% story and then 3% gameplay. These are probably two of the best developed characters in Sky, the Nesting Guide here and the Cellist here. And yeah, it's very cute, their friendship and romance and their childhood struggles and them finally managing to put their dreams together. And I think that all of that is really well executed. However, I think the seasonal area is a bit bland. At this point, would be our third season, I guess, of Aviary, and I think that it's a bit too much in my opinion. And especially what I don't like, especially is there's a cave. And Sky has done a lot of good caves, but this one, especially this concert hall, I just don't like it. It's just a bit too plain for me, and a bit too, I guess, furnished almost. Like, a lot of the other caves are at least a bit mysterious, or have interesting biomes or whatever than that. But for this, I feel like the Duets concert hall is just this grayish blue stone mess, and the gray blue stone that they use for the concert hall, I mean, they use it for so much other stuff, like you see it in every realm. I really think that they could try to use different types of stone. And it's an okay tutorial, I guess. They have some music tutorial stuff, but it barely goes far enough, because with how complicated music is in Sky and how hard it is to understand, I mean, what else could you really do? I understand why Duets had to be here, but I kind of wish they went a bit farther to the gameplay side, because I love how it is implemented in the story. Now, 11th is Flight. Here. Flight has some areas that it excels at, and some that it fails. The seasonal area is easily the best, not the best, but arguably one of the best. Like, even without the cool shortcuts and connections, it's just a really cool, dynamic area to be in. It has great music, I love the wind chimes, I love how everything's so dynamic, so everything in the wind paths is just constantly moving around, constantly circling around. I love the trails and all the mini islands. I mean, the wind paths are really cool. And of course, there's a shortcut option, like the, the connections to the various different realms. I think that's a really cool, and it was implemented really well. However, the quests are a bit lackluster, if I'm being honest. This is a kind of quest, just tap on it to collect the item, and a lot of the seasons are going to be here. Even seasons that are above it at least have some more interesting stuff, but Flight, I feel like, has the least interesting quests out of, the quests are the least interesting part about it. Because it has so many the story is cool, I like the spirits' chemistry and dynamics with each other, but I feel like the quests are so boring and forgettable, nobody cares about them. Like, no one is really even talking about, like, I remember that Flight had such a big bird theme. Like, there's a bird whisperer, and there's so much bird symbology or bird elements and stuff like that. Even the symbol is kind of like a closed up bird's wings. But once you get to it, you realize that, oh, nope, you're just saving mantas and lighting candles, and it's all just a bit generic. 10th is Abyss. This is the most well-rounded season in my opinion. There's nothing that's too amazing about it, but there's nothing terrible about it either. The new area is fine. I mean, I feel like it's a bit hard to navigate, especially with the diving mechanic. And I think that the diving mechanic is like a cool, complement to the flying. But I feel like they should have spent that and made it more, dynamic and interesting, because I love Sky's flight system, and I really hope that the swimming system would be more useful or interesting or varied. But no, this is basically the only real area that actually has any diving stuff in it, so it's kind of wash. The story, I like the story of it a lot. There's a lot of really, really good lore around it, and how the industrial and the mine stuff, and how dark creatures were created, and how the light creatures were abused by the ancestors. You could go on about Abyss, if I'm being honest. But the quests, like the first 4 quests, are just collect diamonds here, collect diamonds here, collect diamonds here. I mean, it's just, kind of a tutorial, if I'm being honest. It's a tutorial for the area and the diving mechanic. It teaches you, in a kind of roundabout way, how to do diving and how to navigate the area. And I think it's plain, a bit generic. The final quest is really the cool part. You get swallowed by this big creature along with a spirit, and it's a cool cinematic moment. I like it. Okay, next up is Dreams. Dreams is probably it's a season that I'd consider very classic, but I'd also see it as dated sometimes. And the Village of Dreams itself is kind of, I mean, it's cool, I guess you could say. It's nice, I like the icy, snowy town theme, but there's a lack of light creatures, and it really feels like the Village of Dreams is very still and empty. And there are some areas that I actually think the still and empty part work, like the Night Passage works and the Enchantment works because they're supposed to be abandoned areas. But for the Village of Dreams, it should be an exciting, cool village for you to navigate around. So it should have been, I guess, more dynamic like that. Maybe have more mantas or birds flying around. I think that would have been much cooler. This season has a very simple story of the dream skater trying to, I guess, get their dreams or whatever. It's a bit generic if I'm being honest now, but when it was released, it was like really good because that was the first time we really had a spirit-focused story in Sky history. So this was in January 2021. I mean, yeah. Back then, there was barely any story in Sky anyway, so Dreams was a big step up. Now, a bit of a tangent, this doesn't really affect much of the ranking, but there's also, if you can zoom in, this guy is cosmetic here. The hat. Now, I want to make my own video on the Dreams hat controversy because it's one of the goofiest and most entertaining controversies that are blown out of proportion, or you could say it's politically minded, or whatever. I mean, I kind of want to make a whole video series on one of Sky's controversies, and that one, the hat, I need to get into that someday. But beyond that, yeah, Dreams is good. All the seasons, I guess, from 11th up, I consider quite good. I'd say Duets is like the borderline of, I mean, it's okay-ish, and then anything below that, it has a lot of big problems, but above it, I mostly have positive things to say of the season. And next up is actually the most recent, I guess, collab season. No, Moomin. The most recent good collab season, you could say. And that is Nine Colored Deer. The story of the Nine-Colored Deer, I mean, the deer itself is a cool, like, ancient spirit. I kind of like the whole mystical vibe it has the Sky, but the human characters and the human spirits I do not care about. One thing that I really dislike is the spirit names, if you can believe it. A lot of them are super generic, they have no relation to Sky, just king, or princess, or hunter. I feel like you could do a lot more interesting stuff with that, but I like the area also. If we talked about dead areas, I think that Nine Colored Deer is like, part of it makes me wish for a more exciting and upbeat place, but I actually like a lot the very calm and near meditative area that the deer offers. It's actually a really big area if you consider the lake, and then the dunes, and then the village area, and then the even the golden tree place. I feel like all of those combined together, it's almost like a whole nother world. And of course, that's where we get to my big problem with it, and it mostly affects Moomin down here, but it also plagued Deer a bit because this was the season that introduced the collab room. So the collab before this, for these two, specifically Little Prince, we'll get to that, and Aurora, these two seasonal areas were basically tied to the world of Sky. They were all accessible through base game areas, and it was kind of accepted that these seasons would be considered as part of the world of Sky like any other, even if they were collabs. However, with the release of the Nine Colored Deer, they also added the lore-breaking collab room, which is this weird pedestal with 1, 2, 3, 4 now meditation shrines that just teleport you to various lands, I guess. And they don't even relate to the Sky world, and that's my least favorite part of the collab room, because beforehand, he had these really interesting questions about, how could they be connected? How are they related? How does it affect the lore even? But with the Nine Colored Deer and Moomin, it just feels like, here's a new area, we can't fit them, so let's just throw it outside of the Sky world and don't bother about it. I feel like that's really lazy if I'm being honest. Like, when this season was first released in beta, no one knew where it would go in the world. Like, I was expecting to be near Isle of Dawn because they're both deserts, or maybe it's like in a hill or a Valley of Triumph almost, because like it's reddish, I guess, and it could be in like a weird dry land, or maybe I just want to be connected to the Sky Realms. But no, it turns out it's just isolated from all of them in general. And I know I've just spent like the past few minutes complaining about it, but yeah, just say that Nine Color Deer is a pretty good story and a pretty good area. It just brought down a bit by how you access it and the whole location of it. Seventh is Moments. And Moments, again, it's actually another tutorial season, but it actually has a bit more going on because you have the Prairie Peaks, and I think it's a cool seasonal area. It's not groundbreaking or anything. I dislike that it's so, I guess, empty. It's more of like a bowl shape if you think about it, because there's a giant flat plain in the middle, and there's mountains on the border of the map. So it's kind of like a bowl shape where you can't really visit the side mountains, and the mountains really aren't the big part of it. It's just like the valley part in the middle. You know, if you've been to the area, you know what I'm talking about. Because even if the mountains are there, they feel more like, I guess, extra random areas, or like, what do you say, set pieces. The mountains and the Prairie Peaks are more like set pieces than like actual place you can visit. And besides the one of them, like that's poorly implemented, the one that's at the very top with the wing light at the top of it, I feel like the mountain, like the, I guess the mountainous and the ravine aspect, they're not really well implemented. But I actually love the Moments camera especially. It reminds me a lot of the Super Mario Odyssey camera, and it has a lot of cool settings and changes and effects, so I actually like it a lot. It allows me to, I guess, appreciate a lot of the older seasonal areas a lot more, and I think it's a prop I use fairly often. And finally, I haven't talked about this much because it's true for all of these seasons, basically, but the music is great. If you didn't know, some of these seasons, if I think it's Remembrance, Passage, Nesting, Duets, Nine Color Deer, Moments, and Moomin, all the seasons post-Remembrance were actually composed by a new composer. So you can kind of hear a subtle difference, because the new composer is Adam Gubman, and his work, I'd say, is more, he has a more, I guess, like a slow, methodical, he uses a lot more piano, while the older composer, Vincent Diamante, used a lot of trumpets and horns, and a lot of flutes. And I think the older one had a lot of more varied instrumentation, but the new one is obviously still very good, and I can't complain about Sky's music. It's always good, but I think Moments especially is very unique with how it introduced the dynamic music system, so yeah. And now sixth, Performance. I mean, this has probably become a fan favorite. The characters, all four of them, are fun, and all the quests introduce them quite well. They're kind of like a fun, quirky group of stage nerds, you could say. And there's, of course, the performance guide. I like the connection to the rhythm guide. At first, I thought it was a bit goofy because, well, you can't do any other characters, just throw them in, but I think it's fine. The big thing it introduces is the new shared recording feature, which is kind of a bit controversial, I'd say, because a lot of people don't like how often they appear or how intrusive they are, but I think they work a lot. I think if implemented a bit better, they could be a really standard way for Sky to, I guess, approach its social system, because I was inspired actually by Super Mario Wonder, a new game, where in its multiplayer mode, the other players wouldn't interact with you directly, but instead they placed, I guess, assistants or barriers, or they call it standees, but they're like tiny little checkpoints or buildings or structures that could help you a bit, and they could also, these people, they can also help guide you, because a lot of the Super Mario Wonder's multiplayer is revolved around these secret levels, and in those secret levels you don't have help on your own, so instead you find other players who place the standees, and oh god, if you play the game you get what I'm saying. The shared memories are kind of similar to those standees in Mario Wonder, and it's a really cool way to help guide players, and I think that it's fairly cool. I mean, there's not much else to talk. And next up is fifth, the top 5 around here. All very, very different seasons in their own right. And fifth is Shattering. Now, Shattering. This is probably a bit controversial. I know that when it was at launch, everyone hated it because it was mostly because of the technical. And my theory was that I think some others that Aurora introduced festival tech and was so technically demanding that all of its technical sides were left, and Shattering had such bad technical bugs and glitches because of that. There's no new emotes or new spirits. The seasonal area is non-existent, but I think it's an interesting fix on Sky's economy, because previously, AC, Ascended Candles, could only be earned once a week by going to the dangerous and frustrating Eye of Eden. But now, they can be acquired using shard eruptions. And I think this is a really unique and clever fix, because if I'm being honest, Eden was kind of commodified, or it wasn't really thought of before Shattering, because it's this grand, epic end of the game, very emotional climax. But then, because the source of this currency, so many players ran it that the magic was lost, because Eden just became, sacrifice the statues as fast as you can, just speedrun through it, and it kind of lost with the emotional impact. And I think it's really good that the devs approached new ways to get AC, because otherwise I feel that Eden would really lose its magic. And Shattering kind of does that. I mean, you have the shard eruptions, which give AC, but I think they could be a bit updated. I mean, Shattering is the one I have most theory crafting ideas for new updates. And the big one, I think, is replacing black shards and having red shards fall every day, and also making it more helpful and useful for new players to track shards. Because, again, similar to Aurora, I hate the game design of new players not knowing what to do, so they search up on wikis or discords what to do. I mean, there's the website Sky Shards Dev or whatever, which has very comprehensive, very detailed location of all the shards, and I feel like TGC should really try to make it more approachable for new players, because otherwise, again, bad game design, having to rely on external sources. And Aurora's Shattering, I know they have similar problems, but rank them so highly. But I think that Shattering has a lot of really experimental and unique stuff. I like the lore, kind of, the weird memories. I think they're really impressive. I especially like the final one with all the elders surrounded with the giant diamond breaking. I think that's all really cool. And yeah, that's why it's fifth. Fourth place is the newest. Well, it's actually not new anymore. It's almost a year old, if you can believe it. But it's Revival. Although the story in it is kind of weird, because it was also introduced with basically an entire overhaul to the new game, so I have to approach that as well with Revival, because they're kind of tied together. So beforehand, your Sky Kid would just wake up at Old Home, this tiny island, and immediately led to Isle of Dawn. But now, they have this whole cutscene where the player is literally flying across the sky, and then you get struck down, and then you have this whole tutorial section that, I mean, it works, because the thing with Sky is that it's a very esoteric and hard to understand game. And I think that the TGC devs understood this, and I remember in the beta phase, a lot of the updates for new players, like the new tutorials, they were a bit controversial, but I think that the old veterans who played the beta version, like the beta players, don't really understand much of what the new player experience. I think that is a weird thing for TGC to do, because in my opinion, they really should have opened it up for new players during the Revival beta testing, because how are we going to beta test something exclusively designed for new players, and then you're going to have old players run through it with their old player ideas and their old player biases? And so yeah, more ranting about how bad beta is, but anyways, I think that Aviary Village is a cool thing. It's a really nicely designed area. I love how lively it is, and again, if you remember back here, the spirits, a lot of them get used here, and they get a lot of improvements, and I really like how dynamic and lively it is. One of my favorite little mechanics is that you can have unique emote interactions with each of the spirits. So if you point next to the point spirit, or pray next to the pray spirit, they have these cool unique interactions, and I really think it helps liven up the world of Sky, and I think it makes really sense for a hub world like Aviary Village. And of course, Hopeful Steward is a very, I guess, basic character, but it works for the first spirit you see in Sky. I think that Hopeful Steward is designed relatively well. I like their kind of whole thing going on, being an assistant and all that. I just wish they used a bit more the Hopeful Steward in the other seasons, because I really think that, I guess, like, of all the spirits in Sky, Hopeful Steward is like the main one, if I'm being honest. Like, I guess you're not the main character of Sky, but the main character of the spirits, basically. Like, it's you, the player, and then this assistant who helps you, and I think that dynamic could be a lot interesting if it was explored more. Now, next up, third place is Sanctuary. Sanctuary has, bar none, my favorite seasonal area in the game, and it's classic done right. I mean, there are improvements, of course, made over time, the geyser area and the new underwater places, but Sanctuary Islands is a beautiful place. It adapts to land and the sky and the sea elements, and it fuses them to make a really unique area. I really like how they have these regular tropical islands, but they also have a bunch of floating islands in the clouds. I think that's a very unique Sky thing to do, because in most other areas that you don't really find that combination. It's either just floating islands or just sea islands. So I think that combining the two for Sanctuary is really cool. The quests are just like a tour around the island, basically. Similar to Abyss, it's just, oh, here's this, what is it? It's a bell. Like, here's this bell, find it and recover it. And just go across the island and you learn about, like, the various nooks and crannies of the place. It has a lot of winged light and wax, so it's a popular area, and I think it's popular for a good reason, honestly. Second place, The Little Prince, and yeah, I've ragged on collabs, but I think that Sky and Little Prince has a very unique, I guess, collaboration. I mean, Sky was inspired by The Little Prince. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They have a lot of similar themes, and I think that the story of The Little Prince is almost like a sequel, if I'm being honest. Because a lot of things that aren't adapted from The Little Prince directly, but instead, they're new things, like new adventures and stuff like that. And the relationship with The Little Prince and Rose, that's explored a lot as well. I think that's a really interesting season. The music, I mean, the reason it's not first, if I'm being honest, is that the Little Prince area, the Solid Desert, has no music. It's completely silent. That was a big missed opportunity, but the quest music is really cool. I like that. But if there was music in the Solid Desert area, that probably would have been first. But otherwise, it's really good. The quests make you feel like a moth again. Like, you're venturing with this child who's, like, innocently asking about the world. It makes sense that Little Prince is acting like this. And the final quest, clearly, is like one of the best in Sky. Revival, I mean, that doesn't have a cake of, but this, like, both of the quests, if you didn't know, Revival and Little Prince both have quests involving going to Eden, but for old players in Revival, it's a bit weird, it's a bit hard to explain why I had to go there, but for Little Prince, it actually made a lot of sense. Little Prince had to ascend to the stars to meet the Rose, and I really like the scene where Little Prince slowly crumbles and dies, and you have to save them. But of course, they realize you can't save them. And finally, once you do all the orbit flight sequence, the whole thing is recontextualized because the Little Prince silently standing there, holding your hand as you walk through the orbit portal. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please do the Little Prince quests. Sadly, they're not replayable, but it's an extremely good time. Now, first, here goes my favorite season of all time, and what I think is the best of all time, Prophecy. This season blends together gameplay, lore, and map design to create a truly incredible season. First comes the Trials, which is the focal point of the season. It's not a social feature like most of Sky, so it has room to be difficult and unique and interesting, which I think is really clever. It's weird, honestly, that the favorite part of Sky has no winged light, there's no flying sequences, it has no social mechanics. It's basically completely different from all of Sky, but I think the difference makes it work here. I love how these trials kind of have like a ethereal, magical vibe to them. Like, it's almost like a void space. Like, it feels almost like I don't know how to explain it. It's like the Shattering memories, but like dial up to 100. The eerie music that plays in them, and I like the very peaceful and triumphant, and all the little tracks that adorn the Prophecy Cave and all that. And of course, the area itself is very nice and cozy. It's not cramped, but it's not empty either. It has plenty of stuff, plenty of very, very interesting murals. But honestly, one of the best places is at the top of the cave. There's this tiny grassy clearing and a bunch of clouds. I think that's a really underrated hangout space. And of course, you know me, you love me for the lore. The prophecy lore is probably one of the most revelatory things to come in Sky. And I was kind of there when it happened. I mean, everyone was freaking about this in the lore. Like, so if you didn't know, before this, there's barely any evidence that the Eden King existed. Check out my video on the Eden King for that. So this was the first time the Eden King was ever referenced in a season. And it was the first time, I guess, the story of the Eden King was actually elaborated in any major way. And it figures out it's very similar to Concept 1, but there's a lot of new stuff as well, like the elemental lights and the role of the elders. I think that's expanded upon. It expands on the stuff from Enchantment. It expands from so much parts of the world of Sky. And I think it's a very unique and interesting way to really bring together this ancient lore aspect to this humble and cozy game. So, that's all the seasons. Credit to Blend Blandon for providing this list, and here it is, bottom to top. If you want me to have any other Sky rankings or other videos, please let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. How do you rank these differently? And that's about it. Bye.